Hey everyone, welcome back to Novelists Unwind. I'm Johnnie Alexander, and I am so excited to be here today with Suzanne Woods Fisher, who is a best-selling author of mainly Amish stories, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, she's written children's stories though, also writes nonfiction, fiction, and we're here to talk a little bit about her writing journey and why a gal from California writes about things that happen in Pennsylvania and just a little bit about her life and her book. So thank you so much for being with me today. I appreciate it.
Oh, this is really fun for me too. It's fun to think of you in Florida and me in California.
I know. Just like two, yes, clear opposite sides of the nation. That's really fun. So
Remember
go
television
ahead.
Jetsons when you were a little girl? You remember watching the cartoon show The Jetsons?
Oh yes, absolutely.
This is what it feels
Yes,
like.
this is like it. Yeah. We're dating ourselves. Really.
That's true.
Yeah, now we finally can do this video conferencing kind of thing, and it's wonderful. And it's a lot of fun. I really enjoy. I enjoy Zoom. Enjoy doing this. So yeah, tell us, were you born and raised in California? And then tell us a little bit about your interest in the other side of the country and in the Amish people.
Well, actually, we're the only woods that are out in California.
Wow.
We came out kind of more in the high school years. My whole family is very East Coast bound,
Okay.
really deep, Mayflower and Penn's Woods and William Penn and all that.
Oh wow.
Our family's history is pretty well entrenched back east, and my mother's family is German Baptist Dunkards, part of the kind of cousins to the Amish and the Mennonite.
Okay.
That's where the background comes from me, as far as a genuine interest in who these people are, and my relatives and cousins and all. So I was born in Illinois, lived in New Jersey, and then came out to California and kind of went to college. We met and married, my brothers and sisters, and I have remained in the San Francisco Bay Area. But I do get back east quite a lot, and I do a lot of traveling, and then of course a lot of family back east. So
yeah.
It's funny, I feel like I am a Californian because not so much like how I think about things, but when I go back east now, I notice the different historical monuments that are all sort of not celebrating a war, but they're sort of monuments. In California doesn't have that. We are so young out here.
Oh yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
Because I grew up with, George Washington had put his horse around every tree and that kind of history.
Right.
And there's nothing like that out here. And I don't think I saw that with clear vision until I'd been away from the East Coast for a couple of years, and then went back and realized, totally different way of thinking.
I kind of get that because I grew up in Ohio, so Midwest, and of course it was settled like in mid to late 1700s, really, to some extent, and then we lived in Nebraska for a while, and remembering that sense of history being so recent, like with wars with the Indians and fighting in the reservations and all of that, and it's like these students that I got to know. Their families were the pioneer families, and it had not been that long ago that they had settled in that land. So, and I'm sure with California, then that's even more the case. It's just still so recent. That's interesting.
We're a young country in a way.
Yeah, we really are. Yeah. So you write about what you call the plain people. Yeah. Tell us about your latest book.
I'll tell you about the latest, and actually one thing just to finish this topic of kind of getting to know the Old Order Amish. When I first started writing about the Old Order Amish, it was for a nonfiction book. It was called Amish Peace, Simple Wisdom for a Complicated World. And it's probably the book I want in my coffin. It's the foundational book for me, where I was able to almost go in not entirely academic sense, but in the sense that I was really trying to understand beyond the bonnets and buggies and beards, to see what people were like. And I would literally knock on doors. I was every contact I could get, because these are people who do not want to be found. So it's not like
Right.
I used to do magazine writing, and that was a whole different thing. But people are eager to talk to you, but not at all in the Amish. It was such a good education. So I think that book helped me then kind of make that transition into writing fiction with more credibility. So 30 books later.
Wow, 30 books later. Oh my gosh. And you're an award-winning author too. Your books have got the Carol Award winner. You've been a finalist in the Carol Award and the Christie Award. I mean, that's so great. Congrats on those.
Yeah, those are honors.
Yeah, they are. That's wonderful.
But yeah, this is the most recent. This is called The Return, and it's the third of a historical series about the Old Order Amish who came to America. And there wasn't a lot of, I'll even point the cover out in a minute because there's something on it I wanted to.
Oh, good.
Covers are a big deal. You know, a lot of work.
Oh, yes.
But this whole series, starting with Anna's Crossing, and then the second one is The Newcomer, and the third one is The Return, just released last week, August 1st. It's about the first Amish that came from Europe over to America in 1737. We know very little, but we do know a lot about those kinds of journeys in that time. And they're horrific, just awful. I mean, you know, half the children would die.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know how they survived, just the kinds of, terrible food. They weren't really passenger ships in the 1700s like they were in the 1800s. They were merchant ships that had been converted from just running through from France and England. And they were just stuffed into the bottom of a lower deck. Greedy shipping agents that packed as many people in like sardines, and away they came. The reason it's an interesting story, or why it relates to all of us, is because all of us have had a cockeyed optimist in our family background who crossed the ocean.
That's true.
All of us, other than Native Americans, or the Atlantic. There was someone way back who really thought it was going to be better over there.
Yes.
Willing to say goodbye. So I loved that part of the story and thinking it belonged to all of us. And the first one is about the actual crossing. The second one is as they're settling, and a lot of the tensions that go on with the boundaries in the 1700s, because this is pre-revolutionary America. This is, you know, and really so much of American history seems to have started, you know, began with the Pilgrims, and then we fast forward to 1776.
Yes. There's a lot of years there.
And some of those buildings that were built in Philadelphia, for example, and right around 1700, Christ Church, which is right near the water, and it was built to last. I mean, it's still in use today, and there was a lot of people there that were there for the long haul. They were determined. So it's a lot about Philadelphia history, about early U.S. history, or not U.S. yet.
Pre-U.S. I like what you said, that I had never thought about that before, that, you know, they were here, and it had to be just so, I mean, scary in lots of ways, and not really knowing what was going to happen in the future was not like a settled thing for them at all. And yet you're right, they built these buildings for permanency. It wasn't a tent building. It was, they did have a vision and a dream, I guess, of something bigger. That's so cool.
Bigger and longer. I mean, they have a sense of generations would be worshiping, for example.
Exactly.
They brought William Penn's baptismal thing there, so you can go in and see the one who was baptized in as an infant. And what I may be wrong, but from what I kind of was led to understand, you know, most cities start from the water, from a port. They begin with First Street, Second Street, Third Street, and it literally drops to wilderness. You know, it's not like it's not hollow out. It's like they're carving their way back.
One numbered street at a time.
Water Street, First Street.
Wow. And yet, like, my mom's maternal family, her paternal, let's say, so my mom's grandfather, we've got his family all the way back to like 1770s. and her mother's family, that paternal line, all the way back to about the same time. And not sure exactly where they came or when they came over, but probably got land after the Revolutionary War. Land was carved out in Ohio, and they settled in southern Ohio. The veterans were given a land grant. And I'm sorry, it sounds like we got a little bit of feedback there. And then they stayed. It's like they never went any further. And it was always interesting to me that they ended up there, and there was so much left, so much more they could have gone to, but they just stayed.
Johnnie, I wonder how much of that is community, the sense of safety and this works. And really, Ohio was pushing the boundaries at that time.
Yeah.
So many skirmishes with, with Native Americans, with, the other countries. I wonder if that just felt brave enough.
Yes, yeah, and then they were just happy staying there. I did read a quote we're getting a little bit off track here, but a quote a long time ago that said the land was so fertile you could tickle it with a hoe, and apparently that was very appealing to the settlers, because they knew then they could, they were going to be able to feed their families. So they stayed.
I love that thinking, though. They found it before.
Yeah. So tell me, again, I read this on your website, I think, or in one of the press releases, but it was such a cool insight, and then how you used it as a story, that one of your characters was a shipbuilder and the Conestoga wagons. I thought that was so cool.
That was so fun. Okay, and that's what I wanted to point out.
Okay, good. Okay.
See in the background a wagon, covered wagon, and we think of these as kind of prairie schooners.
Yes.
People heading out to the Oregon territories. And it was interesting discovering, no, there was a whole other purpose to this wagon in this time. And this was in the early, probably 1760s. And there were shipbuilders. I mean, I don't know if they were shipbuilders. I use my character and kind of fictionalize this story. But the true story is that there are Lancaster Mennonites who designed this wagon to have a ship, kind of a base, a keel. And because of that, things wouldn't knock over inside. So and this Conestoga wagon, they were from the Conestoga Valley. They created this wagon, took a long time, and they took it into Philadelphia, and it became so popular, it literally was the start of transportation, transported goods in.
Oh my gosh.
It was pulled by the Conestoga horse, which another cool story. It was a horse it sounds like kind of a Belgian draft type of a horse. It had been brought over for Williams Penn's stables from Flemish, from Holland and all in Belgium, and it somehow got loose in Port Philadelphia and disappeared into the woods. So this horse and it's no longer in existence, the Conestoga horse, but it's actually a true story.
Gosh, wow.
Special breed of horses pulled the wagons, and that wagon now is becoming. Transportation is, America's growing, and Philadelphia to Lancaster is becoming a thoroughfare. And the driver of the horses, the fellow who steered the horses and all, walked alongside, and he was called a teamster. That's how we get the term today of the Teamster Union.
Oh, yeah.
And better still, you've heard of a stogie cigar?
Yes.
The Teamsters would smoke Conestoga cigars, and that. So all this little history that came out of and I used that basic kind of as scaffolding for the story, but I do have a character who was a ship's carpenter. And when I learned of the Conestoga wagon's beginnings, I thought, I could so see this character having this idea of a different kind of a wagon that's which is so much of what the Germans do. They're just wonderful engineers and resourceful people. So, anyway.
That's so cool. And I love it that it became part of your character. I mean, it's so fun when we can find those historical tidbits and then just use them in the story, and it works and adds such depth to what we're doing, and real. I mean, it's authentic, right? So that's really cool.
Too. I always at the back of my historicals put what's true and what's not, so people at least are leaving with the facts. But I want them to know, the best of my ability.
Yeah.
No idea of what it was like at that time. So.
It could have happened this way. It definitely could have. Well, I read one of your ebook shorts, The Rescue, and yeah, I really enjoyed it. So here's what happened. So I'm reading it, and I knew it was a short when I got it because limited time, and I wanted to make sure I'd read something by you before we had our interview. And I get to, and so then so I'm on my Kindle, and it's and I hit the page, and it goes to the back page, and I'm thinking, wait a minute, I don't want this story to be over. I had forgotten I was reading a specific, a short story, and that I was not reading a novel. So I was wanting, to find out what's going to happen. So I love that you're doing that, though. The Rescue. It's part of the Inn at Eagle Hill series. It's hard for me to pronounce those words sometimes.
It was kind of an experiment because we had the lag with a book 1, 2, and then kind of a little pause.
Okay.
3, and we thought, okay, well, let's try a little e-short and put it in. But I love doing it. And as you know from reading the story, it's not necessarily an Amish story. It's
not.
The characters that were part of it kind of slides right in. But I find most of my readers keep wanting me to get them a hard copy of it, and I can't.
And there is no hard copy. Oh, it's really cool. And of course, it stood alone. So if anyone's watching this and you want to just read the ebook short, The Rescue, you can do that. I mean, I could tell that I was probably missing out on some things about the inn itself and some of that history, but yet I was able to read it and really enjoyed it, except it ended too soon.
Instead of too long.
I know.
I always learned with 4 children, it's better to leave 10 minutes before people wish you could go. And I think it's the same for a book.
That's cute. Okay, so I want to talk about The Devoted for just a couple minutes, and I have something else I want to go off on a whole nother tangent if you've got the time. The Devoted, I love, and I've not been able to read it, but I loved the parallelism that I read about in that story, where you have one character who is wanting to leave the Amish community and another character who is wanting to join, right? Yes. Can you just kind of talk about that, that juxtaposition of those two kinds of things?
Yeah, it's sort of fun to be able to use non-Amish people in a story as a main character or as a strong character. So that you can almost show more of what the Amish are like. You've got almost fresh eyes, almost the way when I go into Pennsylvania and I have sort of fresh eyes at seeing
right.
got some distance. That's what I feel I can use, almost as just as a reflector, a mirror. So when I was writing this story, it's a story about a young woman, Ruthie, who just has a longing for education. And I have met a fair amount of Amish people who probably, if there's one thing that they feel a hunger for, it might be higher education. And yet that doesn't mean their education has to stop there. I've never been in an Amish home without floor-to-ceiling books, and they're well-educated people, and self-taught in many ways. But this girl in particular is just eager to maybe see what's more through education. She's a very bright girl. And at the same time, there's a young man who's coming, and I actually did meet. He's sort of based on a person I met, a fellow who grew up in a very strict Orthodox Catholic family up in Canada. And he comes and has visited the Amish a number of times, and he just feels this calling to them. And I remember interviewing this young man, and he said, if you knew what I came from, the Amish actually, in this situation, were more liberal than.
Oh, wow.
Which was really interesting.
Wow, that's interesting.
Northern Canada, it was just a very distinctive community. So I just thought, okay, wouldn't this be interesting if you had these two coming? And he's coming, without spoiling anything, he is coming because he has sort of a month to try to just get all he can out of this experience with the Amish. And she meets him as she is planning her exit. They really have an interesting kind of dynamic between the two of them that surprises both of them, and that's where I can't tell too much because it's
no, I know you can't really talk about it, but I just think it's really, again, just thought it was really cool that it get like you said, that gives you a way to show the Amish, but then you just have these two people wanting two totally opposite things, and then it just gives more scope for exploring the lifestyles and the dreams and all that kind of thing. Where I think I read this, so this isn't original with me, where she saw a stifling, narrow community, he saw beauty and harmony, or beauty and meaning in the community. I thought, yeah, that's so cool that you could pull those two things together.
Yeah, without their bias. And so he would challenge her on the things she thought were so wonderful about outside. And I think she probably broadened him somewhat. I think he probably changed her more than she changed him. And that's but it's it's good because we all have our biases and how we look at things,
and the grass is greener, and it's not. It may not be. You still have to mow it, right?
And water.
And water, exactly.
California.
Oh gosh. Well, one very interesting thing I read about you on your website was that you raise guide dogs, and I have to tell you, I wanted to talk about that because when I was in 4-H a long time ago, I actually raised 4 guide dogs for Pilot. It was Pilot Dogs Inc. in Columbus, Ohio. They were my 4-H projects. I had a yellow lab, a black lab, a Doberman, and a boxer. And 3 of them became guide dogs for somebody. The black lab, unfortunately, she flunked out of the program.
Career change. They call it career change.
We got her back. They weren't. That's a long time ago. They didn't even do career change. They asked us to take her back, and we did. But she came back different and fought with the other dogs that she'd grown up with, which was really weird. So we found another home with her where she fit in beautifully. But it was, it was such an experience for me as a child. It's like one of the things that I'm still the proudest of is that I did that. And actually one of the biggest disappointments of my life, even still, is that one dog did not make it. I mean, it just crushed me when when they said that she didn't make it. But it was such a wonderful experience. I know what it feels like to give up that first lab. I loved that dog so much.
You were sobbing.
Oh, it was so hard giving him up. And when we went back to meet, the person that he was assigned to, and we were in a room, and he would just go to Ray, who was the blind man, and back to me, and back to Ray, and back to me. And it was like, so, I was so proud and yet heartbroken at the same time. But this wonderful, and so tell everybody what you do. I mean, I just was like, guide dogs.
No, it is. It's so special, and a lot of what makes it special are the people. Just like your connection.
Yes.
Good people. I think people sometimes who have dogs, just in general, have sort of a margin. Because screens get broken and there's urine, that kind of stuff. I sort of enjoy dog lovers as a whole. Not against cat lovers, but it's not a slam. But we got started in this years ago when my youngest son, we'd been living overseas and he really wanted a dog. We had to wait till we got back to the United States. So when we did, my husband, who's not a dog guy, said, you have to find a function, son. And so that very week, I think my son Tad brought home a permission slip to go to Guide Dogs for the Blind, which is over in San Rafael in the San Francisco Bay Area. And they needed chaperones. So I left. And he came home. We got the function. And that was our first dog. His name was Arbor. And I'm so identify with what you said, because when we left, Arbor ended up being paired with a young man who lived in Kansas. So at the graduation time, I knew we weren't going to see him again.
Mm-hmm.
It just, you're focused a little bit on loss, like
yes, you are, yeah.
String of emotion. But the very next day, his mom emailed me. John was in college, and she just said, "You're not going to believe this, but we got home last night, And John, who had he had, I think, RP, where his his eyes were sort of losing his sight. And she said, I don't remember when he walked to his friend's house. It hasn't been for years. And last night, that was the first thing he did.
Oh, that's so cool.
And it was
with
amazing.
That dog. Yeah.
It just all of a sudden went from loss to gain, and it changed everything. They were a wonderful pair. We have done 10 puppies.
Oh my gosh.
Some have been just heartbreaking to give up, and some have been delightful to give up.
I'm sure that's true.
And now with writing, my writing has grown and grown to where the thing about a puppy is you get what you get. And I have had some wonderfully easy puppies and some terrors. And so I'm actually doing breeders now. So I have 4 breeder dogs. In fact, they're in the other room right now.
You have 4 of them? Wow.
Not all at once, but I have had them and love that. And then I volunteer over at Guide Dogs as often as they have. When they have a certain amount of puppies in the kennels, then I'm sort of on the number 1 sub, and I'll go in and work with the little babies.
Oh, that's adorable. That's adorable. Do they mostly use, I'm getting way off writing now, but I'm so interested. Do they mostly use labs as their dogs?
They use labs, like yellow and black. They use golden retrievers, and they use a combination. So 50-50, 70-30, they're kind of always tinkering. And a couple times they start with German Shepherds. They phased that out probably about 8-10 years ago. And then they have tried like some poodles, I think an Australian sheepdog, and they seem to keep just going back to this. You know, Johnnie, you have a 75% pass rate. We're probably at 50%, which is
really
very common. I think the crosses tend to have a little higher pass rate. But you did very well.
Thank you. It was an adventure. And again, I don't think they use the Dobes and the Boxers anymore either. That was phased out, and I think they pretty much also use the labs and the crosses. It's been a long time since I've looked into that, but oh my gosh, I'm just like, oh, this is so cool.
Okay, a total side note, which is nothing.
Yeah, that's okay.
Giving my dog a bath yesterday at one of the stores that you can do the self-grooming, and this person came in with 2 black labs that were flat-coated retrievers.
Oh, wow.
Stunning dogs, absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah.
Guide Dogs doesn't breed for looks.
Right.
They're breeding for a temperament and intelligence.
Exactly.
So, they were stunning. I don't know if you've ever seen a dog like that. They were like almost like a black Irish setter.
They do. They look like black Irish setters, and apparently they're about as goofy and silly as black Irish as the Irish setter is too, from what I understand. So, I've got a collie now, and you talk about hair. Yeah. I am constant, and I take him to be groomed about every month, and I brush him, but there's I promise you can go in there and there's hair in there right now.
Oh yeah, the sunshine streams through and it's just
cleaned in here. Oh, but he's a great dog. I love him to death. Oh my gosh, that is so.
Almost every book. Here's a great segue back. Almost every book has a good dog in
it. That's really cool. Well, and to get back to the book, so I do want to talk about this too. Back in The Return, the main character in it, that story is also based on true events, right? From what I understand.
There's a lot of pieces of the story that are based on truth.
On true events, yeah.
Some facts about the Indian and French skirmishes against the border. British were, we think of Pennsylvania, we don't think of it really as that much wilderness in the northeast. But at that time, the British had a point, the French had a point, and there was constant problems. And that's what kind of starts this story off, that the Amish have not wanted to go to the Lancaster area because the Mennonites were there, because they were suspicious of the Mennonites and taking their young.
Okay.
They went where no one else was, which is a very Amish way of thinking.
Yeah.
Isolated, and unfortunately it was a disastrous situation in the 1760s.
Oh wow. And she's captured by Indians, your main character.
Yeah, in fact, this character, it was a kind of a secondary character. There's a main character. There are two young women in love with the same guy. You know, that's the basic triangle.
Yeah.
And this second character it made such an impact on my editor that she actually canceled the photo shoot from the first character and had it redone.
Oh, wow.
And then they asked me to do a prequel. So I actually wrote it in just so that she had a little more because she kind of makes an entrance a little bit later, but she has quite a big impact in a good way. She's quite a character. So it's kind of moments where a character stands up and takes over.
That is fun, yeah. Can be aggravating too, but yeah. But this is the third book in the series, correct? Then, yeah. Wow. Oh, wow. Oh my gosh. Well, this has just been delightful. We've covered a lot of territory.
We have to do this again. This is great.
We will do this again. Every time you have a book out, just give me a call. Yeah, this is so much fun. And I have appreciated, for those listening, Suzanne blogs, and she highlights authors on her blog. So I think at least 3 of my novels have been featured, and I'm always grateful for that opportunity when I get the note saying Suzanne Fisher Woods. You know, Woods Fisher has these questions for you, and I got to do my first blog, and it's on Suzanne's website.
Your vlog.
Yeah, my vlog, first video log, and it was really fun to do. My daughter helped me with it. We had a great time, and yeah.
For you for kind of pushing things and
it was fun. It was an adventure, and you know, it's just I was a little bit shy about being on camera, but the more you do it, the more fun it is. And now look, here I'm doing doing this every week.
That's good to know. I'm glad to hear that, because I sometimes feel like, oh, I'll do radio, I'll do this, and I don't want to do this.
Yeah, it's really fun. It's really fun. So thank you so much for spending some time with me. Really glad to have you. Make sure you check out Suzanne's books, The Return, the Inn at Eagle Hill series. Yes, and The Devoted. Is it also the third book in a series, or?
It is, yeah. They can kind of be standalone.
Okay.
Hopefully you might want to find out a little, other characters.
Yeah, and she's a great writer. I mean, like I said, I really enjoyed the story once it was like, wait a minute, it can't be over, yet. So I'll probably have to go get the rest of the series and find out what happens. So everybody, thank you so much for being with us today on Novelists Unwind, and come back next week for another special guest. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.